And hello to you from wherever you are, wherever you're logging in. My name is Nicholas, and I'll be leading our session today on integrating wellness initiatives into your organization. I am a training and organizational specialist, and I have been a leader and a teacher for over 20 years. I am a third generation educator on both sides of my family. And if you pick up on a tone that makes me sound like a grown up theater kid, then you are hearing correctly. We are going to dive into some content. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see what I see, but don't let that make you hesitate from interrupting me. I'm happy to clear up any confusion as it comes up or answer any questions as they come up. Type them into the chat, turn your microphone on or turn your camera on, jump up and down one way or another, get my attention. Be more than happy to answer those questions as they come up. I will continue to admit people as we move through. Thank you one last time for being here. When we talk about integrating wellness initiatives into your organization, this is important for all of us trying to encourage others to maybe reduce some of their stress levels. Maybe they are just trying to encourage some higher quality productivity. And sometimes we are talking about working with a small team, or sometimes we are working with the entire organization, trying to encourage them to take their wellness a little bit more seriously. Employees are already carrying too much. Many employees today juggle work deadlines, family responsibilities, financial stressors, but many too are caregivers. 1 in 5 adults, at least in the United States, are caregivers. Another potential stressor is that constant digital connectivity. We're talking about limited recovery time as well. If you are struggling with that work-life balance, it can be a challenge to find enough time during your week, during your day, to really restore. We're going to talk about the difference between restorative practices and just distraction. But when calendars are packed and people are exhausted, even positive opportunities can feel like one more obligation. You probably know this already. But with every ping, ding, and notification that comes through, it is not our frontal cortex that is activated. It is, in fact, our panic center that it wakes up first with every ping, ding, and notification. And you know, the more often that panic center is activated, the more likely it is to be activated. So if you know that some of your employees, some of your coworkers or colleagues, maybe even your friends and family are constantly connected digitally and they are getting many of those notifications throughout their day, might lead them to, at the end of the day, have a bit of that snapping turtle response. Maybe they're taking things a bit personally. A lot of that has to do with all of the notifications that come in are waking up that fight or flight center. And the more often it is activated, the more likely it is to be activated throughout your day. Can lead us to feeling unsettled, unsteady throughout our working day, but also we bring that sometimes home with us to that opportunity where we could do something restorative, and yet we are feeling on high alert. So part of what we are going to talk about today, we're going to discuss that stress in our workplace. We're going to talk about how to incorporate some movement, collaboration, maybe even a little self-reflection into our workday. And we're going to learn how to stay motivated and achieve those wellness goals and encourage others to achieve those wellness goals. We are all learning as we go, which means we are all developing our resiliency every single day. Your resiliency is not the same as it was when you started in your position, may not even be the same as it was on Monday of this week. Because resiliency is developable and a learned skill, it's going to be different than the person who's sitting right next to you. So as we think about responding to our stressors, coping with our stressors, maybe even reaching for those wellness activities, your resilience is unique to yourself and it is growing and changing. People are not machines. And burnout is not a badge of honor. Wellness should reduce burden and not become another task. And people thrive when organizations help restore energy, not simply extract effort. When we talk about stress and burnout, you may already know this because you are already experiencing this yourself. Now, stress is not created equally. There are multiple kinds of stressors, and sometimes we are too quick to pull that stress alarm. We are reaching for that scented candle, that weighted blanket immediately when we feel our heart rate change, we feel our breathing rate become a bit more shallow. But not all stress is created equal. In fact, they have done the research. It was Kelly McGonigal who did the research to find that it is, in fact, the perception of stress as negative on our health that is more damaging to our health than the stress itself. So when we are considering offering some support, suggesting a wellness activity, recognize that some stress is functional stress, helps us get some things done. I am somebody who, if you give me a 14-day deadline, I'll get it done in 13 days. You give me a 7-day deadline, I'll get it done in 6. But you give me one of those deadlines of whenever you can get around to it, whenever it fits into your schedule, whatever works for you. You know what that does? That means that every time I find a break in my day, I have been checking things off my priority list, and I find 5 minutes to maybe be a little bit more restorative. Well, now I've got this lingering assignment that I'm supposed to attend to whenever I have a free moment, whenever I've got a gap in my day, which means my break does not feel restorative. My break feels like a search for what am I supposed to be working on? What am I supposed to be filling every minute with? And rather than taking some relief from that virtual fatigue, rather than engaging in one of those wellness activities, I am looking for a free moment that I can squeeze in one of those nebulous deadlines. So, one of the first ways that we can help somebody toward wellness, let's give them some more specific deadlines. Like I said, you give me a 14-day deadline, I'll get it done early. But you give me one of those whenever you can get to it, Nicholas, type of deadlines. I'm going to put it up on my mental shelf and it's going to gather dust up there. It's a high shelf, too. It's like the one above the refrigerator is going to get some greasy dust on top of it. I don't know when I'm going to be able to pull that back down. So, to help with those stress levels, let's get clearer with our deadlines. Because then that functional stress gets organized into a priority list and I can start checking those things off. Another type of stress that we might not want to dismiss is that identity stress. Now, when somebody steps up to you and they are talking about maybe another corner of their life, not necessarily the job, but maybe they're talking about their home life, maybe they are a caregiver, maybe they are a parent. Those types of stressors help us understand who we are. If it helps with our identity, that might not be a stress that we want to alleviate. So as you listen and as you respond to someone talking about what they might be dealing with outside of the job, you might want to recognize that that might not be a stress that they want to dismiss. Instead, we're going to focus a little bit today on those stressors that we might want to dial back, that we might want to find some relief from. When we are carrying stress, we do carry it in our big muscle groups. We might clench our jaw, we might feel our shoulders raising up to our earlobes, we might hold it in our fists. Sometimes we are curled over our desk. All of that means that we are clinging to a stress that is not helping us with our coping. And it can become physically exhausting. It can become so physically exhausting to carry around that stress that it does interrupt our sleep cycle, does interrupt our ability to power down at the end of the day. And when we are feeling those stressors, those are the types of stressors we do want to do something about. Now, stress is a little bit different than burnout, as you might already know. Whereas we have that physical exhaustion, from stress. We might have that emotional exhaustion from burnout. Burnout is associated with increased absenteeism, reduced productivity, turnover, and poorer health outcomes. When we are talking about that emotional burnout, that is that feeling of I have been chipping away at this mountain and the mountain is not getting any smaller. I'm putting forth 110%. I'm only getting 30% back. That can lead us to question and wonder, why am I going to continue to care if I am not feeling restored? When I'm already at the bottom of my tank of compassion, when I'm experiencing that compassion fatigue, from where am I going to draw additional resources to help push back some of those symptoms of burnout? The WHO, the World Health Organization, officially recognizes burnout as an occupational phenomenon. Gallup found that employees experiencing burnout are 63% more likely to take sick days, 2.6 times more likely to seek a different job, and 23% more likely to visit emergency rooms. Workplaces pay for burnout whether wellness is prioritized or not. So as you think about how you might respond to burnout and respond to stress, what are your red flags? How do you know when you are stressed and you need to do something about it? Do me a favor, roll out your keyboards. If you've got an idea here, what are your red flags in your behavior that lets you know that your stress levels have exceeded that functional stress and that identity stress, and that you are needing to do something about your stress levels? What shows up in your behavior when you have exceeded your preferred level or your functional level of stress? Don't care anymore. My eye twitches. When I stop feeling motivated, I get snappy, I can't focus, so I'm not able to make decisions, get cranky with my kids. It is important to note for yourself, and thank you so much for these contributions to the chat. Sometimes we just want to sleep. Knowing for yourself what are these red flags lets you know I need to take a step back. And when we are feeling those backaches, when we are feeling that jaw tension or becoming short or curt with people, recognize that might be a different type of day. That might be a day that you need to address your burnout in a different way, address your stress in a different way. I myself am somebody who will probably never run a marathon, but I can tell you that if I ever did, if I crossed that ticker tape, or I crossed that finish line, that is a day that I am not going to help you move afterward. I am not cooking a dinner for 10. I am not helping you go to the airport. So when you can look at your calendar and you see an emotional marathon of a day, a mental marathon of a day, we need to change our wellness practice so that it can be responsive to the day that we have had. Thank you so much for those contributions into the chat. When we are thinking about other experiences or reasons why we might need some wellness practices there at the day, virtual fatigue is a huge one. When we think about how much time we spend crouched in one position staring at our screens, we might be experiencing some of these physical symptoms. And some of it has to do with that critique, that staring at ourselves, analyzing ourselves, but also looking for the facial reactions of others who might be on our screen. Might lead us to that cognitive overload as we are trying to respond to everything that is in the chat while receiving pings, dings, and notifications from our other devices. So when we think about encouraging wellness for our staff, for our teams, remember there may be a benefit to switching some of those virtual meetings to an in-person, to a phone call. If I can still hear the tone of your voice, then I am using more of my communication skills than if I was just reading that email. And sometimes when we find that we have been in meeting after meeting, screen after screen, we start to numb a little bit. It becomes harder to highlight what is important. And so if you have a message that you need to get across to some of your staff or specifically one employee or colleague, consider bringing them face to face if you can. And if the only option is to connect with them remotely, see if they are okay with a phone call. Just get their eyes off of that screen for a little bit. Reducing that virtual fatigue can be a way that we are encouraging some wellness. Now, there is a misconception about wellness that wellness means yoga classes and fruit bowls. Those are healthy practices, but in reality, wellness includes psychological safety at the workplace, workload management, meaningful recovery time. But it also means healthy relationships and emotional well-being. And much of that comes from organizational support. Now, there is a misconception that people who do not participate in wellness activities don't care. But the reality of it is people are exhausted many times. And it's exhaustion, not being unmotivated, that may encourage them or cause them to not participate in a wellness activity. So when we think about seeking and supporting social connections, that might be an ERG, an employee resource group, but it also might be encouraging an employee, a colleague, a friend, or a family member to connect with an interest, a project, a passion of theirs, and see who you meet there. Sometimes we are only encouraging people to bring along who are their current friends or their current support network. And sometimes it is worth it to introduce to them the idea of, let's go to that activity that you know replenishes that tank of compassion for you, something that you do enjoy, and let's see who you meet there. They may become part of your new social network. As we are encouraging our coworkers and colleagues to engage in some of these new wellness activities, one of the best things we can do is give an example of how we participated in it, how we had our first experience with a new group of people who are already interested in the same activity as us. I mean, I don't want to reach directly for pickleball, but by going to an activity as opposed to encouraging your friend group to try something new, go to that activity that you already know is helpful for you and see who you meet there. If you have experienced that type of interaction for yourself, then you can say to your staff members, I tried it. It was a little apprehensive at first. I wasn't sure who I was going to meet there, but I knew that I was going to enjoy the activity. So at the very least, I knew that I was going to be feeling better about some of my choices. And as long as I stayed open to seeing who else I met there, it was true that there were other people there who were equally apprehensive. And we were able to connect on the, are you new to this as well? Is this your first time with this group? Your firsthand experience is going to help encourage coworkers and colleagues to at least consider that type of social connection. Another way that you can encourage some social connection is asking their employees, asking your colleagues and coworkers, who do you usually turn to? Who have you turned to in the past when you've been feeling overwhelmed? We don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes we remind ourselves that, I haven't connected with a family member who's on the other side of the country in a while. I'm going to contact them and see if I can't get a fresh take, a fresh perspective. When we talk about our own personal experience, we do encourage our coworkers to at least give it a thought, maybe even give it a try, this particular type of wellness activity. Another way that we can encourage some reluctant employees to participate. When employees may be reluctant to participate, you may hear them say, I barely have time to finish my work, let alone engage in a wellness event. I don't want my coworkers judging me, and that's why I don't participate. I already feel overwhelmed. This feels performative, is another common pushback. I've seen wellness initiatives disappear after a month. I don't want another mandatory activity. And just as a reminder to the leaders who might be on this call, resistance often reflects exhaustion, not opposition. And so as we consider some wellness activities, again, remind them that it can be simple. It doesn't have to be driving across town. It doesn't have to be spending an hour on a Zoom call, but it can just be 60 seconds focusing on the rising and falling of breath. The beginnings of meditation, that is something we can do at our desk. That is something that we can do solo. And when we think about whenever you've got the moment type of deadline, that is something that we want them to try and wedge in between their priorities. When they do have a break, this is how we can turn a distraction into a restorative practice. Rather than spending all 10 minutes of your break scrolling through, a distraction might be able to do something as simple as focusing on that breath without judgment, and allow that to be how you spend your break. And that is going to help reduce stress levels. That is going to help you feel like you are taking some action toward wellness without feeling like you are committing a tremendous amount of time, or sometimes there is that fear of being judged by coworkers. Taking just 60 seconds to breathe is another way that they can help themselves without being in the spotlight. And if you have tried it yourself, you will encourage others to give it a shot as well. Spending just a few minutes outdoors.
Oh, okay. So what are they going to do?
Spending just a few minutes outdoors can make a huge difference. And again, remind folks of what you do when you have experienced feelings of being overwhelmed or overstressed or burned out. Let them know I am not just recommending this to you because of an academic interest. I am telling you, I have tried it. I have been in that position. I have been in that place. And what was helpful for me was spending some time outdoors. I myself, you can't tell because I am sitting down, but I myself am over 6 feet tall. So I oftentimes will choose a wellness activity outside and in the forest. I just like being around things that are bigger than me. Helps me stand up straighter. You can also remind them to think about someone that they are grateful for, as opposed to something that they are grateful to have in their life. Someone they are grateful for helps shift the spotlight off themselves for a moment and remind them that they have a connection that maybe they haven't connected with in a while. And remind your coworkers that you too have felt the stress and wondered, how much longer is this going to last? How much longer are we going to be in this limbo state? You have had those moments of doubt that you didn't know if you were going to make it to the Friday without having to take a day off because the stress was building up on you. And yet you found a way through, your resilience grew, and you learned what to do. Tell them that you have been there in that position, in that place, and you are going to see more adoption of these practices once you establish the psychological safety of addressing their own needs. And psychological safety at the workplace is huge. When we think about apprehension, when we think about why we are not seeing our coworkers and colleagues, our employees and staff engaging in some wellness activities, it can be because they don't feel necessarily safe to try something new, or safe to admit that they need, or safe to feel like they can take some time off, even if it's just a break, not necessarily PTO. So one of the ways that we can help rebuild some psychological safety around the workplace and get some better buy-in for some of these wellness practices, model that wellness publicly. Not only just talking about these wellness practices, but show them that you too take breaks, you too take a walking lunch, you too sometimes need to put a do not disturb on your door so that you can just process and recenter for 5 minutes, and that there's nothing wrong with that. You find it effective, you find it helpful, and when you show them that you do it too, you're going to see better buy-in. Also, another way that we can help lead the charge for wellness practices, create some calendar boundaries. And just like I was talking about with that mental marathon or emotional marathon of a day, schedule recovery periods. You may notice on your team calendar that there is a longer than average seminar, or perhaps a more critical meeting, after which you can assume there is going to be a need for recovery. Now, if we are counting on our employees to take that recovery time on their own, of their own volition, we're going to see some respect their need for a break and others who are going to have a hard time carving out that time. So if we establish it and put it on the calendar for them, or we establish it and put it on the calendar for ourselves and show them, I am not scheduling anything after this meeting. I am intentionally putting my lunch hour right at the end of that seminar because I know it's going to be exhausting, potentially frustrating, and I want to have a little extra time. So if I need to adapt in the moment, I have the opportunity. It's already boxed out in my calendar. But also, ask employees what helps. What is going to help them take some time and engage in some wellness? Use some surveys, some listening sessions, check in. Don't assume that everybody needs the same thing or the same quality of wellness. Ask them what would be helpful. They may say, I just want to be able to talk to some colleagues and coworkers and vent out what is going on for me. Other times they might say, I need some time away from responsibilities and priorities. And reward participation carefully. Reward participation carefully, meaning if they do engage in one of these wellness activities, recognize that involvement without creating pressure, meaning you might want to address that person individually. Let them know, hey, I saw that you took some time for yourself. And you know what? That's exactly what I do too. I took some time on my calendar as well. I'm glad I've got somebody else who's also interested in recovery. But do that one on one as opposed to standing in front of a team meeting and letting them know which people took some time. Again, that is not increasing that psychological safety by putting that spotlight on them. It puts a little pressure on other folks as well as the people who we are trying to reward. Instead, acknowledge them individually. And make wellness part of the culture, meaning integrate some wellness into meetings, onboarding, and leadership conversations. Oftentimes, I encourage for that need of psychological safety. Kick off your meeting with some vulnerability and transparency. Set the tone of psychological safety by using some language that you are hoping to hear from them, some transparency that you are hoping to hear from them. Let them know, I was feeling a little frustrated after that last meeting, and so I needed to do something to help myself feel better. I wished we had been better prepared, but before I dove into preparation for the next meeting, I needed 10 minutes to just let myself calm down and cool down because I wasn't expecting to be that frustrated. How do you feel? I start that meeting with that vulnerability and transparency, and then I share the mic that boosts that psychological safety, that sets the tone for talking about what we need, what might be helpful. And that's going to encourage people to reflect upon their own needs, advocate for those needs, and take some time for those wellness initiatives. Question into the chat. Yes, we will have access to these slides. And yes, you will have access to this recording. I will send that on after our presentation. Now, when we think about how we can collaborate with our coworkers, right off the bat, we want to connect with them, meaning find out where they are emotionally, what their status is, and then get on the same page for what is an offer, an expectation for this wellness activity. Don't assume that they already know, or make sure that they don't have a misconception about what participation might look like, what your expectation might be for their participation, and then accept and build from their responses. When they say they are apprehensive, that is them trying to connect. When you let them know this is going to be new for other people, that is getting on the same page. And accepting what they are bringing to the conversation is how we build forward. When we think about how we can encourage more people to participate in wellness initiatives, start with that connection. They may have some lingering emotional congestion that they need to clear out before they can talk about the details and talk about the benefits of some of these wellness initiatives. They might need to let you know how overworked, overstressed, and burned out they are feeling. Let's not bypass that part of the conversation. Kick off with that connection, then talk about the details, then get into what might be a question and how we are going to take some action to move forward. And of course, movement is a huge part of wellness, especially at the workplace, at the job. We find ourselves too sedentary, too still for too long, and sometimes we are clinging to that stress. So when we are in that crouched position, when we are curled over, just receiving stress and not giving ourselves a chance to stand up, move, stretch, get some better blood flow, we might be clinging on to some of that stress that we don't need. In just 5 minutes, you can help yourself get a better oxygen exchange rate coming to the mind. You're going to have more solutions to more problems. You're going to have better coping. So when we are talking about integrating some wellness into your meetings, into your organization, you may want to make it a part of your next meeting that we are going to stand up first. We are going to get up out of those chairs. We are going to maybe do a little mingle just for the sake of changing the blood flow, changing the oxygen exchange rate. But also, when we have stress, we tend to clench our jaws. We tend to hold it in our shoulders. And sometimes it takes somebody to remind us, you don't have to have your shoulders up that high. Sometimes we have to acknowledge, I cling to my stress and my jaw too. I clench just like everybody else. And sometimes I have to stretch it out. We think about those walk breaks. Not only is it good for the circulation, it can be good for the mental health. Just walking away from my desk, walking away from my office space helps me feel more empowered, helps me feel more clear-headed when I can put some distance between myself and my devices. And when you do encourage the wellness activity of just taking a walk around the building, encourage them to maybe leave their devices at their desk. Put some distance between themselves and those pings, dings, notifications so they don't feel that alert going off so many times. They can truly take the break that they need and shed some of that stress. Now, when it comes to stretching at the workplace, this might be a little dated of a graphic, but the stretching is still valid. Again, when we think about wellness initiatives and people adopting them, we are not necessarily talking about carving out an hour to go to a volunteer activity, although if that's what helps you, absolutely go do. But when we need some beginning buy-in to help somebody snowball some momentum into a greater wellness practice, sometimes it is as simple as stretching at your desk, putting a little extra blood flow. So consider some of these stretches, and yes, you will have access to this slide deck. You can keep this infographic, as dated as it might be, somewhere near you while you are working. And then you can pass along your firsthand experience to other coworkers and colleagues. You can say, I tried it. I do it. I bring out this little infographic every once in a while and just remind myself to get my shoulders back down lower. So when we think about incorporating the wellness into our day, it does not have to be hours and hours. It can be just a few moments. Brief movement breaks improve attention and reduce fatigue. If we can get outside, nature reduces stress physiology. And when we talk about mindfulness, talk about bringing our focus back to the present moment. I know mindfulness sometimes gets a bad rap. But when we are bringing our focus back into the present moment, that means we are not stuck in the mud, reliving some cringy moments from the past, nor are we spinning our wheels with anxiety into the future. We are here where the rubber meets the road, talking about what action can I take right here and now to help myself feel better. And again, a mindfulness practice is something that you can try, something that we will try a little bit later. And then you can say from firsthand experience, I tried just a few moments of bringing my mindset back here, now, and us, and I found that I was able to shed some of the symptoms of anxiety and depression. And we talk about that mindful eating. This can be just another reminder, something that you can share with coworkers and colleagues that even this counts as some self care and some daily wellness. Reaching for an apple instead of a bag of chips is a healthier choice that you can feel good about. And when we are eating a little bit healthier, sometimes we tend to savor it a little bit longer. And that slowing down is also going to help our mental health. When we think about other ways that we can help ourselves and help our coworkers engage in some wellness activities, it might be just dealing with that mental and emotional, that inner dialogue. Now, so many people barely have enough compassion left in their tank when they end their day to do something good for themselves. They are satisfied enough with scrolling through and not doing something that's truly going to help take some stress out of their shoulders, let them let go of some frustration, maybe even get that sense of accomplishment and completion from completing a task. All of that seems like too much when we don't have enough compassion left in our tank, because when our compassion is completely fatigued, that means we don't have self-compassion either. Another struggle that you can talk to your colleagues and coworkers about is that feeling at the end of an emotionally marathon of a day, how difficult you find it to do something healthy for yourself, and that sometimes you would rather just let that wash of screens and stream-in programs take away some of your memories of a frustrating day. Mindfulness helps. Walking outdoors is another restorative practice. Social connection we have talked about, and let's not discount therapy or coaching. Reaching out to an EAP, reaching out to an ERG. I myself like to contact my sister who's on the other side of the country. Not because she totally understands what I am going through, but because she can give me a fresh take, a fresh perspective. And typically, when I check in with my sister, she tells me what's going on with her life, and I can look back and say, well, good luck with that. And suddenly I am grateful for the stress that I have compared to what she is going through. Also, consider some form of exercise that works for you. I'm not saying that we need to engage in CrossFit. I mentioned pickleball earlier, but if that is not your thing, find an exercise activity that works for you. Yoga counts. Qigong counts. Strolling outdoors counts as exercise. We don't have to have it always be cardio and aerobic. Sometimes it is just the movement of those muscles that can help us shed our stress. I myself am somebody who wears the hat of spouse. I have a partner. And although I can say a lot with empathy, I can listen, I can offer some reflective statements, nothing helps my partner better than getting some exercise. Going for a run, going for a jog is her way of shedding that stress and boosting her mental health. So consider even some reflective journaling. Some of the benefits are going to be it's going to restore your emotional, cognitive, and physiological resources, meaning we are going to put some energy back in your system. We're going to put some compassion back in your tank. And go ahead and acknowledge for some of your coworkers and colleagues that you are tempted to just doom scroll at the end of a difficult day. And it takes a little extra energy to get up and take a walk. Excessive multitasking is another way that we distract ourselves rather than doing something restorative. Constant email checking, working through lunch, short-term relief, that type of distraction can create long-term depletion of our compassion. When we've got a little compassion left in our tank, we are more likely to eat healthier, get some exercise, do something that's going to help ourselves feel better rather than just distract ourselves from feeling worse. So, when we are coming up with a practical action plan to help incorporate some more wellness into our community, I want to come over here to the chat for just a second. Puzzle in our staff room for people who work on when they want to get away from their desk helps take their mind off of the stressors of the day. Very good suggestion. Get a nice little vacation. Also, is a very visual representation of wellness. This is here just in case you want to take a moment away from responsibilities and priorities and still engage your mind in a calm and restorative way. It's a nice visual representation. And as you see pieces added to that puzzle, that is evidence of there are people in the room, people in the building who are taking some breaks, doing something healthy for themselves. That is going to help snowball the staff when there are other examples of people doing it. So this month, consider surveying your staff, asking what might be motivating for them. Remove one unnecessary process for your staff, for your community, for your colleagues. Pilot one micro wellness activity for your colleagues, meaning a stretch break at the top of a meeting, a transparent, honest, vulnerable check-in at the top of a meeting. Create some protected recovery time, if not just for yourself, for your colleagues and coworkers. Put some PTO on your calendar. Put an hour after that difficult meeting so that you're going to have some time to decompress, and then let other people know I am deliberately putting a do not disturb an hour after this meeting because I know it is potentially going to be frustrating, and I want to make sure that I have time to process before I start to make connections with others. And train your other leaders on burnout awareness. Let other people know this is a truly impactful experience. When people are feeling burned out, it makes them less likely to participate, more reluctant to share. And if they don't feel the psychological safety, meaning if they are being blamed for their own burnout, that's going to silence them, and they are not going to advocate for their own needs. So everything here about getting motivated are examples that you can share with your team and coworker, but also for yourself as you are trying to initiate some additional wellness activities. Start small. Consistency beats intensity. That regularity of wellness practices will eventually start to gather more interest and more participation rather than the rare, intense wellness practice. You probably heard of SMART goals before, but some statistics worth remembering. Employee well-being strongly predicts engagement and retention. Social connection improves resilience and reduces stress. Maybe you have had the experience of coming home, trying to explain to your home team why today was difficult, what elements were there, why it was important to you. And even though you explain it well, your home team, having not experienced it themselves, will just look back and go, uh-huh. And sometimes it is an ERG, a colleague, where you can just look at them, point to who just walked out of your office, roll your eyes, and your coworker looks back and says, I know exactly what you're talking about. So that type of social connection is valuable even there at the workplace. It's unfortunate, but burnout does contribute to substantial organizational costs. So if you needed a cold hard facts, brass tacks, reason why addressing burnout is important for you and your organization and beating back some symptoms of burnout is important for your organization, it does add to cost, that burnout. Simple practice that you can utilize during your day to help beat back those symptoms of emotional burnout. Rather than asking yourself, what can I get started in the next hour? Ask yourself, what can I get done in the next 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes? Because a sense of completion will beat back some of those symptoms of burnout. If you are thinking about a simple, small wellness practice, an initiative that you can instigate with your team, consider in this meeting, we are going to get to the end of a project or a task. We are going to start one and end one so that we can all point to it and say, if nothing else today, at least I got that done. That sense of accomplishment and completion will beat back some of those symptoms of burnout. Let your teams know that on the weekends when you have some downtime, especially if it has been an emotionally draining week, what you do is look for opportunities for that sense of accomplishment, sense of completion. I myself have a project in my backyard. I've got a project in my garage. These are projects that will never be done. When I am feeling burned out, I don't engage in these projects that have no end. I specifically look for projects that I can get to the end of, tie a bow on, slide it to the end of my workbench, and say, nothing else, at least I got that done. Recovery periods improve performance and not just well being. Putting on the calendar for your team 30 minutes after the meeting, where we can do that with that time, what we need to help prepare for the next meeting. Sometimes it's difficult for someone, especially with those nebulous deadlines, to take a half an hour for themselves. Sometimes you have to put it on the calendar for them. Sometimes it is worthwhile to organize your meetings in that inverted triangle fashion. Only invite who needs to be there for the beginning of that meeting, and that might be everybody. You got 10 people that have to be at that meeting, but the next 15 minutes only needs 5 of those people. So check in with them, clarify the expectations and the priorities, and then say, these 5 from this team, you can have the next hour to yourself to be productive, or take a walk outside, do something restorative, because for the rest of the meeting, we're only going to need these 5 people. And by the end of the meeting, you're down to just you and 2 others. Cut people loose, give them an opportunity to engage in some restorative practices. Recovery is a performance strategy. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed with all the suggestions that might be coming at you. So pick 1 to 2 things to work on. Consider what barriers might be standing in your way from implementing some of these wellness practices. Participation increases when wellness is easy, acceptable, flexible, but supported, visible like that puzzle in the break room, and that time is protected, meaning they don't have to feel bad about taking that time for themselves. You are going to help carve out some time for them for these wellness practices. And ask yourself, as you are coming up with some of these suggestions for these initiatives, do employees have time for this during work? Or is this only an after work type of recovery practice? Because we don't know all the caregiving needs and all the roles that someone else might play, if we are only scheduling recovery initiatives outside of work, it might be more difficult for them to maintain that work-life balance. So by protecting some time during the workday, you are helping your team engage and participate more in these wellness activities. Like I said, you are going to have a copy of this. Some leadership language examples might be, instead of take care of yourself, try, let's discuss workload barriers. Instead of use your resources, try, how can we reduce friction and improve recovery opportunities? Instead of, and this is a big one, do more with less, try, let's identify sustainable ways to work smarter. So a little shift in the language can help somebody reattend to their needs and their wellness. And if they are feeling supported by leadership, supported by you, they are more likely to give it a try. And to that end, I want you to be able to engage in a little wellness yourself so that you can say you took some time today to shed some stress and refocus. So go ahead, push yourself back in your chair, relax. We take 90% of the information through our eyes. So go ahead and drop your eyelids. Give yourself a chance to cut down on information. And I'm going to take us through just a simple relaxation practice, something that you can do every day at your desk is minimize the distractions and focus on just the rising and falling of your breath. Don't judge it. Don't try to change it. Just note it for yourself. How is that breath coming in and out? Next, imagine that you are someplace that is calming and restorative for you, someplace you have been or someplace that you would like to go. And don't just name it in your mind, begin to see it around you. What do you see at a distance? What do you see up close? Who do you see in this place? Take a moment and in your mind's eye, look around this place and imagine you were there. Next, what would you hear in this place? If you're at the beach, can you hear the waves? If you're in the forest, can you hear the trees? Can you hear the music? Really focus on what you would hear if you were in this place at this time. Next, focus on what you would feel. Can you feel the breeze? Can you feel the softness of a comfortable blanket? Can you feel the sand between your toes? Can you feel the sunshine on your face? Focus on what it would feel like to be in this place now. Next, what would you smell if you were here? Can you smell the trees? Can you smell the suntan lotion? Can you smell the cookies baking? Can you smell the ocean air? Focus on what you would smell if you were in this place at this time. Come back. We're going to take 3 cleansing breaths together. Inhale, and exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, and exhale. Open your eyes and come on back to us. Now you can say that you have engaged in a little wellness today. You took some time, just took 5 minutes. And if you are starting to feel better, if you're feeling a little clearer headed, if your shoulders have dropped away from your earlobes, then you can tell your coworkers and colleagues that even you took some time today for a little wellness, and it didn't take much effort. It made a big difference. And with that, I want to give you just the final thought of organizations don't create healthy cultures through slogans. Healthy cultures happen when people feel seen, supported, respected, trusted, and allowed to recover. People perform best when wellness is integrated, not just added. So I want to thank you all for your time and attention. And now you've had a firsthand experience of a little wellness here today. I am going to stop my share. I'm going to bring myself back here so I can answer any questions or respond to any comments you might have. Go ahead and pop some questions into the chat. I appreciate all of your gratitude. I send it right on back to you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time. And if you've got some questions, I'd be more than happy to answer it. I'm also going to send down my slide deck, which has a full resource list. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope you have a great rest of your week. My name is Nicholas, and I certainly hope you'll join us again. Thank you so much, and I will see you all at the next one.